Lately I've been staring at the dark.
Chapter 1. When I sat down to plan out how this book was going to look, chapter 1 was quite obvious. It's the chapter where I have to introduce everything. I have to lay the foundations for the rest of the book. So I created an outline document, which you can see here. When I do like a very basic outline, I just do bullet points, I just list ideas, and it's all the main kind of points I want to cover in the chapter, knowing full well that when I start writing, the chapter is going to take a totally different shape to what I first envisaged. This chapter, I'm calling it, Isn't It Iconic? I want to define what it means to be an icon. I want to look at popular uses of the word icon and how they're all wrong. I want to explore what the difference is between celebrities, influencers, and icons. I want to talk about the zeitgeist and measuring social impact. And I want to give everyone a really good kick in the pants. So this was my original outline, and then as I got closer and closer to starting to write the chapter, it kind of changed. I knew that I had to find a really good book on icons, like a sociological book on icons, because everywhere that I looked online, icons were talked about in terms of marketing and in terms of iconography. I wanted to look at the sociology of icons. So I went online and I started reading this book, which I ended up ordering, called Iconic Power. And while I was waiting for that to arrive, I decided that I really needed to start the book with something that really draws the reader in. Because the problem with all of these sociology of icons books is that they're quite boring. They don't really ground it in any contemporary examples. So I wanted to really entice people. I sat down and I wrote my story of how I came to start writing the book and how I came to start wanting to explore icons. But then once I finished writing my story, inspiration dried up. I knew I had to wait to get the book in the mail to really know how I'm going to ground all of my big ideas from the entire book in this first chapter and show other people's opinions and ideas, to show that I'm not alone, I know what I'm doing, and to give a lot of context for icons, because where I want to go is somewhere quite different. So I sat and I waited, and then the book arrived and I could finally start the process of writing this chapter. This stage is what I like to call discovery. This is one of the books I found. Today I've just been doing some highlighting. What I'm finding really interesting so far is that firstly, they haven't defined what an icon is, who an icon is, and secondly, they don't define iconic power, iconic consciousness, etc. So that is quite frustrating, because the whole reason for me looking at this book is to get other people's definitions so I can craft my own and know what the go is, but currently it is not being any help. However, there are some interesting things that I have identified in the first 2 chapters that I have read. Firstly, what I found is that art plays a huge role in the study of icons and our understanding of icons and our experience of icons. So this was my original feeling that, like, it is perhaps only musicians that can be the most iconic and influential people on earth, because they are artists and because they sit across so many different realms of culture. What also is really interesting is the use of images. So this is the first chapter from the book, which is talking about representation, presentation, and presence. What I find really interesting is that this chapter touches briefly on us consuming art, in the sense that we are looking at art and the art is looking back at us, in particular images. They write, when the viewer experiences the presence of the artwork, she is experiencing a being there, an emphatic sense. This is beyond a subjective sentiment or a projection of mere preconceptions. Nothing constrains her experience of being completely taken in. So this whole idea of presence actually comes from absence within the images. So I think In particular, in this chapter, what they're talking about is images of people who are no longer alive, and mythic people, religious people, where people look at paintings, photographs, etc., and they know that the people are no longer alive, that they're not actually here, they're not present in the room with us, but that very absence intensifies their presence. And what I am interested in this respect is that this chapter, this whole book came out about 10 or 11 years ago, before the complete and meteoric rise of social media. Now, of course, social media was around 10 plus years ago. However, there's things such as Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok that have really changed like the fast-paced nature of social media, especially short-form video that we can now consume at such a large rate. So I'm really interested in how, this book is talking about historical images, paintings and other artistic artifact over time, where the absence of the person creates like a stronger, intensified presence in the experience of the viewer. I'm curious to know what the result of social media is. Surely if we are consuming thousands of videos a day, thousands of images, potentially of the same person or group or thing, does that then amplify their presence in our lives? Well, according to, this chapter in this book, yeah. And that then explains so much about our parasocial connections, and then also goes to prove my argument that it is the parasocial relationship that builds and creates the icon. And in the next chapter, this was kind of like further backed up, because the chapter was looking at the critic, as in like the art critic, or, the critics that write for, say, for example, the New York Times, which is what this chapter looked at, and how it is through the language and the critique of the critic that icons are created and perpetuated and maintained. So not only is the critic kind of saying, well, this person is the best architect, and using all of this wonderful and elaborate wording to explain why this architecture is so great, but also by doing this, they're also creating the audience at the same time, and then giving the audience the words and the understanding of something that they might not already understand. So this chapter kind of says that it's the critic who creates the icon, or at least perpetuates them and alerts other people to them. And this whole notion of critics for big publications is slowly dying out. It's no longer a major thing, and we don't often turn to critics to know what we want to think or how we want to think it. We are turning to people on the internet. And in that respect, we, as the audience, have turned ourselves into the critics. And social media has given us the platform to be critical of everything. So because of social media, we have all become critics, and we, through our own critiques, create our own audiences. And they're not often just for us, they're for the icons or the phenomena that we are discussing and exploring. Which further goes to play into the whole argument of the parasocial relationship and the key role that audience plays in the creation of icons. And then that has led me to wonder if the only thing that makes an icon, the fact that it has an audience that believes it to be an icon, is that the only definition? If I go, that screen over there is iconic, does that then make it iconic? Or does it require a certain number of people? Or are we just going to say that, yes, everything is iconic? If you say everything's iconic, then yes, it is iconic. How do we measure that? How do we say, well, no, that screen isn't iconic? You're just kind of throwing that word around willy-nilly. And how do we go, well, we only want to focus on this kind of icons? How do we define that? So definitely what I've learned so far in the book is that nobody really wants to define icon. So I'm going to define them for my book, because I think if you are introducing any new words, any new concepts in writing, you have to define what they are so that the audience knows what you're saying. I had my last ever night shift at the newspaper factory a week ago. I finished at like 2 a.m. last Thursday. And now I am managing a cafe. It happened so quickly, but it just felt right, and I can't exactly explain why. I've essentially been hiding for the past 4 years while I completely restructured my life. So I'm guessing I'm back doing this because I have successfully restructured my life. And now it's time to be seen more. I guess that's one of my learnings. I'm trying to figure out why I'm back in hospo, why I'm back doing what I thought I would never do again. I'm still working at the newspaper factory one night a week, one evening a week. And I also recently picked up a client accidentally who is paying me quite a lot of money to help her push her book across the finishing line for self-publishing. And I'm just about to wrap on a big book project for my company and starting like another 2 or 3. They're all coming through the copy edit stage, which is where things get really intense. And I am trying to write this book. So yes, I'm awake early because my body clock has very quickly changed back to wanting to be awake early. I'm going to the cafe. I'm going to read the book on iconic power, see if I can think some more thoughts and take some more notes. And I'm going to check in with all the staff because I am trying to be a manager on only like 15 or 20 hours a week because I don't want to work full time, because I am working full time for myself. I just hope I can balance all of this. And I sometimes resent that I have to make money to survive and that my company is not giving me that money. The chapter that I just read was about the fall of the Berlin Wall as an iconic event. What I found really interesting was the intersection of revolution and iconicity. Where all of my book writing kind of begun was my interest in revolution, and the particular revolution that comes from idols, musicians, celebrity, and the positive social change that music can make. So it was really interesting that I was reading about revolution again. What I learned is that Poland and Hungary were also doing amazing things, and of course, like, the root of the revolution was in many different events that happened in those countries. But what everybody knows about, what everybody talks about, what everybody remembers is the fall of the Berlin Wall, which was just the culmination of many other things. And it is the performance of the fall of the wall, the media coverage in the West, the ability for everyone to understand the revolution through something as simple as a wall falling down. That is what I find really interesting, because it is icons that help communicate these experiences. So also in this chapter it said it's not just about communication, actually it's about experience. Of course, the BBC and other news outlets were covering what was happening in Poland and Hungary, but talking about like a roundtable discussion isn't as exciting as the coverage of the Berlin Wall, which is very dramatic and it's very symbolic. And everybody can understand, okay, there was one country divided into two by a wall and now it has fallen. Very easy to understand. Exciting. It kind of adds to this narrative of what a revolution should look like. Not a bunch of people sitting around in rooms having discussions. That's not as exciting, it's not as easy to understand, it's not as easily communicable. A large portion of what makes an icon or an iconic event is public perception and the public's ability to understand what the icon is representing or is about or saying or doing, and then their ability to remember it and easily bring it up and talk about it, and it just becomes part of the zeitgeist. Lots to think about, and so many parallels that I can draw between what I learnt in that chapter and what I want to say in the book. So that's really useful. But once again, nobody has defined icon, iconic power, iconicity, any of those big words that are being thrown around in this book. No one has defined them. That's all I've been looking for, but I'm getting a whole lot of other things along the way. Okay, great. So then we're going to just do the final check on all the chapters today as well. Together. I can't feel its presence in my mind because I'm just so like in the middle of it. I feel like I can't see all the moving parts, which only happens every now and then for me. Normally I've got a really, really clear and strong grasp on everything. Today I said in a message to my friend Mish, well, firstly, we've been remarking about how I've been waking up so early. And normally the time that I'm waking up now is the time that I'd be going to sleep. after finishing night shift. And she said to me, "This is the Walia that I knew when we first started talking." My reply was, "Yeah, I just survived my year at rock bottom." And it's interesting that I said that, without really thinking about it much. But my rock bottom, the whole concept of rock bottom is so interesting, because you hit the bottom and then you find out there's another bottom. And another bottom and another bottom, and just like the spiral of life is like upwards and never ending, so you're walking this spiral and it constantly goes up, and at any point in time you can look back and yesterday is right there and 2 years ago is right there, and you are kind of repeating the same patterns, and kind of slightly they take place slightly further up the spiral than before. And so they're always slightly different, but we're in this pattern, in this spiral, and we're going upwards. So just like that, we can also spiral down. And at every kind of new level of the downward spiral, you go, "Oh, this is it. It doesn't get any worse than this." And then, of course, it gets worse. So it's interesting that I kind of subconsciously framed this past year as being the rock bottom, because of course 2020 was absolute rock bottom, 2021 was absolute rock bottom too, then 2021 to 2022 absolutely, but then this past year of 2022 to 2023 is kind of like the recovery from everything. And in that process of recovering, the aftermath is actually worse than the math, is there such a thing, than the actual rock bottom. Because I guess there's just the illusion that everything's okay because circumstances are improving. But I think things were really bleak. So it feels like I've just this past week come out of a year-long rock bottom, which was part of a 3-year rock bottom. And the end of a massive cycle took place, I think, many weeks ago, but now I'm just starting to feel it and see it, and as a result I'm thrust into so many new things. And it's really interesting that it's at this time that I am writing Iconicism, trying to write it, and that I'm hoping this is all part of my own journey of iconicity, which I'll only be able to kind of know, maybe never, if I have such an impact. A girl can dream, I suppose. And it does feel kind of foolish to share these dreams. These are normally just thoughts people keep to themselves because it seems absurd to want this. And it almost seems that by virtue of wanting it and saying it out loud kind of means that you're not going to get it. It's not going to happen. There's pessimistic, optimistic, nihilistic, pragmatic. I'm trying to be pragmatic. I'm trying to be neutral. I might not do it, but right now I am doing it. Well, right now I'm just talking into a camera while I'm laying in bed. But I worked on it today. I worked on it yesterday. Probably going to work on it tomorrow. And at some point here, I'm going to start writing. And that'll be a really good day. When I kind of pull all the threads together. I know that I'm already doing too much. I would love it if I could take time off and just write this book. When I wrote my first book, Idle Limerence, I took 6 weeks off over Christmas, and it really helped me get to know the book. I can learn rapidly, but it takes a long time to sink in, and for me to fully be able to use everything that I'm learning to the highest of my capabilities. So now that my commitments are growing, I have to try and get used to them and also reduce them wherever I can. So last night I was going to let my old job know that I will be needing to leave in the next few weeks. But when I got in, the manager was like, "Oh, it's so good to see you." He sat down, we had a talk. He's like, "Oh, I really want to get you more hours. People are going away on holidays soon, so don't worry, we'll be looking after you." And I felt bad. I didn't want to rain on his parade because he was showing me so many things, and he's like, "This is how you fix this machine. This is something that you need to know about this machine." Really acting like I was going to keep staying there because he had no other reason to think otherwise. So yeah, I still have 2 jobs, and I'm off to the cafe to check in with everyone, to keep on reading this book, and hopefully this week I will start writing this part of the chapter where I define who and what an icon is.
I'm wearing a cow sweater.
A cow sweat. Oh, it is a cow. Really do look like birds. At the back of my mind is always the fact that I have to be maintaining my brand, building an audience. Because when I wrote my first book, I hadn't been doing that. I tucked myself away from the world. I posted weird things to Instagram to let people know that I was writing, but no one really knew what the book was about. I wasn't doing anything to build an audience or garner any interest in my work. So that meant that when I released my book, I put a lot of pressure on myself to try and market it, and it was very stressful, and it took a while before people started like buying it and reading it. I don't want to do that again. Ideally, I would have been writing this book when my company was taking off and I had a whole team ready to help me market it, but that is not the case. I have to try and do everything myself, which is really hard because I just want to write this book in a vacuum. I don't want anything else to be happening anywhere near me. I just want to write the book. But social media is free. It is a powerful tool of marketing and community nurturing and engagement and building. So I would be foolish not to capitalize on it, not to use it during this stage of writing the book. I have my brand of Walia Eaglehawk, who is me. And then I also have another brand called the BTS Theorist. And that brand has the biggest capacity to get the most attention. So although my book isn't 100% about BTS, I still have to keep maintaining this audience, because it would be foolish to let my follower count drop, to let engagement slide when I could be maintaining it and then leveraging it whenever I need. Today, what I want to do is try and catch up on making content for the BTS Theorist, because it has been neglected this week. It often tends to be the first thing to go if I don't have content prepared. So I just want to prepare some content for the coming week. Do you want to be iconic? Well, according to this book, I like the way I look and I like the way my content is looking and sounding right now, but I'm running out of shit that I want to say. Making progress, starting to tell the world about my ideas, about being iconic. I just have to find a way to be quicker with what I'm saying, because it's going over 2 minutes of video and I really want to be like, you know, short and to the point. But in order for that to happen, I have to take out most context, and then it's going to be kind of potentially controversial, which 50% of my content needs to be. So okay, that's given me some new ideas. Okay, bye. I've got to go film. I've got to make some polarizing content. Exhausting, but necessary. The second stage of writing Isn't It Iconic is making it happen. It is the 20th of September. Last week, as I was driving to the cafe, I had this really cool moment of all of the thoughts in my head becoming about what I wanted to write next in Iconicism, to the extent that I actually started writing in my head while I was driving. So by the time I got to the cafe, I was ready to go. I sat down, opened my laptop, and I structured out the rest of the first chapter and did quite a lot of writing in it. But it is getting really fiddly because I'm needing to synthesize everything in this iconic power book, and I also need to go and find out what everyone else is kind of saying in terms of popular conceptions of icon, and synthesize that and put it into the front end of the chapter. So it's not necessarily flow state writing. It's actually kind of start, stop while I'm really thinking about how I want to explain all of these kind of broad concepts in a really easy to understand and exciting way. But so I was very successful last week, but then haven't done anything since. Thank you.
Hi, Leah.
Today, something happened. Matty Healy started following me on Instagram, and it had nothing to do with anything in particular. He posted something, and I made a rather facetious comment, and he liked it, and then he started following me. I went to the other comments that he liked in the comment section and checked to see if he was following those people too, and he wasn't. So he saw my comment, went to my profile and saw something that made him go, I'm going to follow this chick. And he just so happens to be the person that I'm writing this book about. Literally, there's only like 2 people in this world that I kind of like idolize or look up to in an extreme way, because it's not generally something that I do, and Matty Healy is one of them. So it was a very surreal moment. I was in shock. When I saw that he was following me, I went to his profile to be like, is this really his profile? Even though I knew it was. Then of course I had to go and figure out how he found me, and of course it was my comment, obviously. And then I, still in shock, decided to shoot my shot. So I sent him a message. And this is really not my style, but I thought, okay, he followed me. I may as well, say something. So I said, dude, I'm literally writing a book about you and the role of musicians as cultural icons right now. So this is fortuitous timing. And then he read the message and left me on scene. Which is okay. I'm not terribly upset about that. Of course, I would have loved for him to write back and be like, oh, cool. But of course, whenever people send me messages saying, oh, I'm doing this because of you, or I'm doing this about you, my response is mostly like, oh, cool, thank you so much. I don't really know how to respond to that. So I didn't really ask him any specific question or ask anything of him. So I guess I didn't really give him anything to reply to necessarily. And that's okay. I'm taking this for what it is. Matty followed me on Instagram, and now I have someone potentially seeing my posts that could read my work, that could actually like my work, that I could speak to and learn more from and have a connection with. No one famous has ever come anywhere near me, let alone the person that I'm writing about. So after having a parasocial relationship with Matty Healy for 10 years, he's now just some guy that follows me on Instagram who I follow back. So it's no longer parasocial, is it? So yeah, I definitely cried, because during my illness and the building of my company and writing of my first book and everything that I've been through in the past 3 years in particular, I did not receive any positive sign. In fact, I felt like I was receiving a lot of negative signs. I don't recall anything ever happening where I was like, oh, this is great, I'm going to keep going, because this has really filled me with hope. And I would say to my mum and to my friends a lot, be like, I just wish one really nice positive thing would happen for me, so I would know that I have to keep going. And I didn't get that. And then just like that, something completely unrelated to my work, to everything that I've been building, brings me in touch with Matty Healy, and I get a positive sign. Just like that. So it's an open door, and now I just have to keep doing what I'm doing, knowing that he might be watching. Chapter 1 is nearly done, and the more I think about it, the less I actually know. And despite having written a whole chapter about who and what an icon is and what they do and how to define them, it feels like I know less now than I ever have before. Obviously one No, well, because I have to start so people know what kind of icons I'm talking about. Otherwise, if everything can be iconic, then the whole book doesn't really have the same kind of punch. For something to be iconic, it has to be symbolic, and it has to represent greater depth and a greater narrative. And I'm not sure what Taylor Swift's is, because the 1975 are a traditional band. They actually don't make a lot of content, whereas BTS are the opposite. They make a ridiculous amount of parasocial content. Everyone does it differently, right? So I want to find different people at different kind of ends of the spectrum to explore what they did to get where they are. So it's not just music, like a visual artist, they mostly just do visual art. If you were to look at someone's presence online, they're just putting out their art. Musicians sit across literature, film, fashion, staging, performance, so on, and of course music. So that's really kind of I guess from the research that I've been doing, it's really saying that an icon is a performance. So they are at the top end of performers in the world. Because then if you look at people like actual actors, why I don't think really any actor is an icon is because the actors aren't actually acting as themselves. in what we're seeing. So the person has to be themselves. The story has to be about them. And everything that they create has to be about them. It has been about a month since I started writing the book. This is the longest amount of time I've ever taken to write the chapter. My brain has changed since my illness. I can't do things the same way, and I knew that, but it's still frustrating. Everything just takes longer. My thoughts are all there, but my ability to like pull them forth, like to recall them and to synthesize them in a quick manner is not there anymore, not in the same way. And it feels like I've lost sight of the rest of the book. Like, I know what I want to write, but I can't really feel it or sense it anymore. I just have to remember that writing a book is just like making shit up, right? And I'm really good at that. That's all I have to do. I have to stop taking it so seriously and just fucking write. So the part that I tried to write today comes under a heading called From Religion to Social Media, where I want to pull the threads through from what I've already discussed in the chapter about religion and computers and icons. And I want to update everything for contemporary times, hence use social media. And I was feeling like really bleh about it because, I don't know, it just wasn't interesting me or exciting me. But something that I always do when I hit this kind of wall of being disinterested is that I remember to come back to my story, because the problem with this whole first chapter is that I'm talking about a lot of other people's ideas, which is not my place of power. My place of power is talking about my own ideas. I decided to cover a whole chunk of my time from 2012. I found myself in this really interesting position where I was increasingly interested in organised religion. I became a massive fan of One Direction in a way that felt like it was completely out of my control and against my better judgment. I also found myself in a situation where I became part of a really powerful clique here on the coast where I live that kind of dictated the culture. Like they were like the tastemakers. It was a whole scene. And for me, that was like a big deal because I am primarily reclusive, mega nerdy. I was a major like internet girl, so I spent my time at home on the internet. So to find myself a part of like a very popular and powerful clique was very strange for me. I've never been popular in my life. So I was kind of riding this wave, and this same clique frequented church, which I found very ironic because they did terrible, terrible things, and then they went to church after. So I'm kind of exploring that, and that how when I was at university, I learnt about Durkheim, who set out to theorize religion and has since, obviously, I mean, he's been dead a long time, but he theorized religion. And how when I learnt about him, I was able to connect a lot of dots, mainly between music and religion, and how I felt that music, and in particular, like the intersection of music and celebritism, was the modern day religion for so many people. So I kind of grounded this part of the chapter where I want to talk about social media and celebritism, and then use that as a segue to explore what kind of icons I want to talk about and explore in the rest of the book. When all of this happened to me in 2012, I actually started writing a book, the first ever book, like non-fiction book I've tried to write. And it was called Love in an Age of Styles because it was about Harry Styles. And it was about how, like, a fan's relationship to a celebrity musician and how music is acting as like a modern day religion, etc., and identity creation, all of essentially the content that you find in Idle Limerence. It originated with this book, Love in an Age of Styles, and the research that I did in 2012 and onwards. So anyway, I just pulled up, I found like an old copy of Love in an Age of Styles, and so I've been reading it, which is really cringe, but there's a few things that I wanted to share. The main one, which is totally wild, I did not remember any of this, but as you know, the chapter that I'm working on right now, it's called Isn't It Iconic? because it's meant to be a you know, play on, isn't it ironic, you know, blah. But as you can see, isn't it iconic? I was just reading Love in Nature Styles, and here is the title of the second chapter. I haven't had an original thought since 2012. I had no recollection of this whatsoever. Like, 2012 was a long time ago. My brain wasn't even fully developed in 2012. So, like, anyway, it's really wild. And I had this moment last night as well, because I was looking at, you know, like Instagram shows you things from your archive. So you can see back, like, I was looking at something from 2019, from the 3rd of October. And I do this sometimes, like, I think about the patterns of life, even down to, like, the exact day. So I was looking at, like, the 2nd and 3rd of October in all of the years that have just gone by, like, and what I was doing on those days. You know, so in 2019, on the 3rd of October, I was at a regional arts conference, going to bed really, like, unsure of everything. I really wanted to be a published writer. I had all of these ideas about BTS and fandom and all, you know, all of these ideas that I'm sharing with you now, that I've been carrying with me for a long time. And I was so unsure if I would ever make it, or if I could even, like, write a book, because that was so unknown to me at the time. And then a year after that, I was speaking at the National Young Writers Summit. And then I was just about to launch the second ever book that I published the day after that. Then a year after that, I was learning how to typeset my first book for an author whose book I'm just about to publish again. Like, I'm about to publish her second book with me and my company. You know, so just thinking about, like, how I've taken, like, what feels like painfully small steps over time that no one in particular sees. I forgot about a lot of this stuff. And I look back and go, holy shit, like, I've been trying so hard for so long. And I've been passionate about the same things my entire life. That's pretty overwhelming. I'm so overwhelmed, I can't even tell you what I'm feeling right now. And this book is, like, it's so much more than a book. And I don't want to talk about my illness all the time, and I don't want to be melodramatic. So I don't know how much to say or how to frame it, because it does feel very dramatic to me. But I never thought I would be able to write again. I don't know why all of this is coming out right now. And to fully walk away from writing, and all of my hopes and dreams, was completely soul crushing. In a different way to, like, not having the hopes and dreams realized, but just to, like, let them go. And because I'm such a purpose driven person, it was fucking hectic. But and now for me to be sitting here complaining, like, oh no, it took me over a month to write a chapter, when I was so sick I couldn't even move my fingers to, like, write on my phone or say my name or remember my name, because my whole body was just, like, shutting down. Sorry for crying. Obviously, like, many different things going on right now. Anything positive I could do after what I've been through is a fucking win. And if I can find happiness in that, which is still a very strange concept to me. I don't actually know if happiness is real, but I think I'm happy. So if I'm feeling this way, even when I'm where I don't want to be physically or, like, career-wise, it's whatever. This book, my original point, this is more than just a book to me. It's living again, and it's also sharing things that I have been working on and thinking about for 11 plus years. And reclaiming parts of myself that, you know, lay dormant or discarded. And reclaiming my life again when I had let everything go. And just showing the world who I am, and hopefully people see. I would like that. The third stage, blockages, barriers and delays. which I have conveniently not filmed. I got really, really sick. The kind of sick that I hadn't felt in a long time. And of course, the pendulum swings both ways. So I was really fatigued. And then I found myself not being able to sleep.
I've spent the past 3 days in particular so sick. The symptoms that I had were very much like the ones that I had when I was incredibly sick. Earlier, I was so tired, I tried to sleep and kind of half fell asleep and then woke up, and I have not been able to sleep since, and I literally just started writing in the book. And just before, I was like doing my journal entry for the day, and I said, I don't even know if I'll ever finish this book. I don't even know if I'll ever make it. It just feels like I'm stuck here forever in this town doing mediocre shit in the same bed I've had since I was 15. I kind of wish Matty never followed me, because it was easier when he was someone that wasn't potentially paying attention to me. And then it brought up a lot of old patterns of behaviour that I experienced when I was writing my previous book about Nem June. All the shit that comes up with parasocial relationships. I don't know, it's all because I'm not in control, right? I don't know why he followed me. I don't know if anything will ever come of it. I don't know what it means. And now I'm analysing everything I was going to say and seeing it all through his eyes, which is a very dangerous thing that I do because it doesn't get me anywhere. And then I got to a point where it's like, do I even care anymore? Do I even want to write about him? Do I even want to write this book? And I think what's happening is like, it's my own subconscious way of protecting myself from rejection or just not being seen, because it's like, now that he follows me, if nothing ever happens, like if he never talks to me, if I release this book and he never reads it, and I will interpret that as a rejection. I think that's what's happening, like internally. So to prevent from that kind of like agonizing, my brain's just like, just don't fucking write about it. But I know that's not what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna do the thing anyway, right? It's just all terribly confusing. And I've been just very overexposed to the 1975 for the whole past year since it's been a year today or yesterday since they released Being Funny in a Foreign Language, and of course it popped off, rightfully so. Great album. And when they did their American tour, TikTok just was relentless with showing me videos, and which is then of course why I was thinking about them so much, which is then why I started developing this book. But now I think after a whole year I've just been overexposed, and it's just too much for me, especially because I'm not feeling well, so my brain and my body is like, no, make it stop. And now with this like added layer of confusion, it's like, why is he following me? What does it all mean? I can't really do anything about it, just gotta be chill, you know, just a bit done. Anyway, I just wrote a whole freaking paragraph. So for someone who just spent 3 days being in bed sick, it's very strange that I'm awake right now writing. Like, it's not the poor guy's fault, it's just my own self-sabotage, right? But it's also like, bro, if you're gonna follow me, at least tell me what's going on. At least be like, oops, my finger slipped 2 or 3 times to follow you. Or, hey, you looked cool, want to check out your work, peace out, don't message me like a crazy stalker fan. You know, he could have said anything. But to leave me on scene, obviously got some unresolved stuff there. I've got to go. I should be writing instead of doing whatever this is. I think it would have been easier to write this book if Matty hadn't have followed me, but I'm going to use it as a positive because I have no other choice. So I will rise to the occasion and continue to be myself and write exactly what I was going to write before, but just use it as positive reinforcement. He followed me for a reason, unless his finger genuinely slipped 2 or 3 times to get to that follow button. I'm delirious. Okay, good night. I love you.
Which brings me to the final stage of writing, isn't it iconic? Which is pushing through. I'm getting so tired of my own shit. Like, I just have to write this first chapter. It's as simple as that. Some days my ideas motivate me. Some days other people motivate me, like when I want to do stuff in response to them. Other days, like today, I just have to get to a place in my mind where I kind of like snap and go, fuck it. I'm just doing it because I want to move on to the next chapter. I don't want to be stuck in this kind of preliminary, like, oh, establishing the book and going through all my fears and all my thoughts and feelings. Like, I'm done with this chapter of my process and the book. So it just needs to get done so I can move on. And then at a later time, I can come back, I can edit it, I can refine it. But I just need to get it all out, then move the fuck on. Before I got sick, I seemed to be able to hold like an entire book in my mind and like hold the concepts and all the key threads and like write knowing all of that. And like I didn't need necessarily to like write everything down, though I did. But I don't know, I was just able to store it all and recall it very easily in my mind. But since my illness, I've lost like a lot of that ability, and I don't know if it's gone forever or if I just need to retrain myself. But the best way that I can explain it is like having an automatic car or a manual car, right? Or like an automated system or a manual system. So before, when I wrote, it was all automated, like inside my head. I would just be able to, it would just all come out in the correct order. It would flow very well, and I would be able to pull all the key threads through and not forget any main points and ensure consistency throughout the whole book. Today, my brain is not able to hold everything. So instead of it being automated like that, I have to like go old school manual. And so this is what I do when, you know, I can't conceptually hold everything, but I need to write anyway. And I'm hoping I still get the same result for the reader. Okay, so this is a part I wrote to try and make it interesting, to really ground it back into my own personal story. But this is kind of like the preamble to the main point that I want to make. So previously in the chapter, I introduced other people's ideas where they were talking about religious icons and computer icons. And what I want to do is go from religion and computers to social media and musicians. So I'm introducing like a part of my story where I was really interested in religion and music icons in different ways back in 2012, and you know, kind of like all the work that I did on that. And here I am just trying to segue into the key argument, which I've written down here to remind myself. So we're going from religion to social media, religious icons to cultural icons. So here I have put the new ideas that I want to introduce, and my main point is kind of about how in that same book they talked a lot about images, paintings, photographs, etc., and how they solidify the icon as being iconic through representation. They talk a lot about absence and presence and all this other stuff, which is really cool to think about, especially in relation to art. So that's my main argument, that through social media we have had this like hyper representation of people, not just celebrities now, but all people, that in our minds kind of solidifies them as being iconic or important or famous or whatever. And these are all the main points from further up in the text that I want to link back to. So this is everything that I've kind of written about icons, religious icons, etc., and I'm going to link it all to contemporary times. So that's the first point I want to get. Then I want to talk about how some icons uphold and perpetuate culture and some lead culture. And the whole reason for the book is to look at the icons that lead culture, in particular musicians. So this is kind of where I'm saying this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. Because theoretically we could look at any kind of icon, but why am I looking at the icons that I want to look at? And then I want to do a conclusion where I tie all the main points in, which is why I've like tried keeping track of them in the document. That's kind of how I do it manually. Normally if I'm in flow state, I'm like holding all of this in my mind and like writing it as I go, and I don't need this same level of note taking, though I do leave myself a lot of notes like this, just saying this is my next point, especially if I'm like looking off for the day. It's like this is what's coming next, and then, you know, it's kind of like connect the dots. I need to go from here to here to here, but the image that I can create with that could be something entirely different. Also, when I was reading Iconic Power, I made notes in a Word document. So as you can see here, I do a mix of direct quotes, which I always try to put in quotation marks, though I'm not sure if I have properly here. And then I also do my own kind of paraphrasing or synthesizing. And then below it, as you can see down the bottom here, I have done my own note taking. And it really comes in handy when I'm writing. So at the moment, I can just literally copy and paste this entire chunk into the chapter that I'm writing and then rework it from there. The past few days, every morning that I've woken up, I've had really extreme dizziness. And because of my fatigue, I've wanted to sleep in the afternoon. But every time I've woken up from sleep, I've been really dizzy. So I've stopped having naps in the afternoon. This morning I woke up and was mega dizzy again. So I was Googling it and it said try drinking water. So I drank some water and my dizziness went away. So if you haven't drunk water today, I think it's time you drink some. I've written about 1,000 words today, which is the most I've written in a single sitting for quite some time. And it's really starting to come together. The current argument that I'm making is that according to the literature, icons have been helped in becoming icons by portraiture images that bring about a great presence in the experience of the viewer, a presence of the icon. And so I wanted to update it for contemporary times by talking about social media, and in particular how apps like TikTok have created heightened presence of everyone through repetition. I had to think about a cool example to use. So I know that Jungkook from BTS is probably the most popular member in terms of like how much his content gets viewed, also because he's the most active right now. So I looked up his hashtag on TikTok and it has 225 billion views. So of course the first thing that we can learn from that is that that's a fuck ton of views. Holy shit. Because normally, like, of course, there's hashtags on TikTok that are in the trillions of views, but it's like for more broad things like comedy, funny, blah. This is for one person. First thing, that's a lot. Second thing, that's a lot of repetition. It's not 225 billion people looking at him once. It's a smaller number of people, obviously, because we only have, I looked it up, 7.888 billion people in the world. Let's say there's just 20 million people. That means each of them have seen his face 11,250 times. And this is just on one hashtag. There are many hashtags. And also, you don't need hashtags to see stuff on TikTok. And also, TikTok isn't the only place that you're seeing stuff. So it's through that repetition that people become icons, right? But not everyone. But it definitely sets them up for being remembered and giving people a real sense of intimacy with them. Because 11,250 times, that's more than I've seen most of my family members. So we're developing like these really intense relationships with people just through sheer repetition alone. And there's many other factors that goes into it. But anyway, that's what I was writing about today. Like never before on this earth have so many people been seen by so many people. It's not normal. No wonder why I hate it on there. I don't want to be looking at people all that much. But then the more that I look at them, the more that I want to look at them and the more I want to know about them. And of course, this is how we get down the parasocial relationship rabbit hole. I've been up early today writing, got 820 words down. I reckon I'm just 500 words away from finishing this chapter. I think I need to write a second draft. So I think, yeah, I'll finish the first draft in the next hour. I don't know if it's any good, and then I'll do second draft. I'm going to be writing about icons that lead culture. I've just spoken about icons upholding culture, and I use One Direction as a great example of that, where everyone's like, oh, they're iconic. Yeah, true, debatable, but true. Like, if you think they're iconic, then they're iconic, but they're not really the icons that I want to be exploring, because they just uphold and perpetuate culture, just like the Kardashians, for example. Super iconic. Kim Kardashian is super iconic, but she no longer like leads culture. She sets trends, but all of it's within the same kind of like dominant discourse, dominant framework of like hyper commodification, hypersexualization. Like all of this is like, I'm not trying to shame her for it. Honestly, sexualize yourself if you can, if you need to make money. But she's also a billionaire, right? So I'm not sure many billionaires can actually truly lead and change culture. You can be a leader in your realm, in your industry. You can be the best at what you do, but are you actually changing society? Kim Kardashian actually does great work getting people off death row, but the majority of what she does just upholds dominant discourses, dominant ways of seeing and doing things. Complex, but interesting. Definitely nothing wrong with it. She's still an icon, just not the icon that I particularly want to look at in the context of this book. I want to look at icons that lead culture and create culture. It's so perfectly still and quiet in town at the moment. You can hear like a dog barking like 3 blocks away. You can hear a car starting up. You can hear the breeze, but like nothing else is going on. Perfect. And I finished writing chapter 1. It's all there. And now I get to add to it and refine it. So for all intents and purposes, this chapter of my process, it's done. And I feel like an entirely different person to the person who first thought of this book and then started writing it a month and a half ago. I don't know what's going to happen next. I have no idea what's in store for this book. And even though I have an outline for it, I have no idea what I'm going to write. But today, I've finished. And that's all that matters right now. Do you want to start from the very beginning?
How many words is it?
8,000, 9,000. Or do you want to start just from, here we go, just from where you got up to yesterday? Oh, that's
I'd like to see
I
it.
can see that from 100 metres away.
Well, off you go. I don't want to be kind of squinting like this because when the camera's on me. Okay. We're good?
Yep. Just read. No problems?
No, it's reading really well.
No. I thought you saw something.
No, I was just breathing.
Okay.
Good.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is it okay way
Yeah.
to conclude it?
Yeah.
Because I feel like I just decided I didn't want to tie everything in because it's not the conclusion of the whole book. So
No, I think it just holds enough. Absolutely. Good. I think it's very good. I was going to say for a first draft, but your first draft is so much better than my first drafts.
With a knife?
Is this good for the recording? Probably. Should stay in for the matter of significance. Significance.
Do you want to be
Sort
producer
of
of the
hair,
show?
like the hair and the...
Well, I was cutting capsicum, which is red, and then I just went...
red nails, red
I was
capsicum.
like, oh, it was fucking
I think it
terrifying.
would be good to put this up on your
Thanks, Mum.
daily events.
My daily lens.
You know where you do that with all the little things you do in a day?
Oh, I already posted that today.
This is for tomorrow.
Oh. Thanks, Mum. Thank you for your time.
Okay. We good? Am I able to just exit here without upsetting
you
the recording?
may exit.
Sure.
1 chapter down. 10 to go.
Lately I've been staring at the dark.